together to minimize the wastages, including the fact that, from what Dr. Bindi has said, the point is that even the administrative cost of managing several subsidies itself is huge, because you have to set up organizations to manage maybe the NSIP, to manage the Empower, to manage this one, to manage that one. You have to pay bureaucrats, you have to make them comfortable, you have to get buildings for them. Remember that the Oronsai report of 2011 had 521 MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies. As we speak today, it's getting close to 1,100. And so there are many of them that you've never heard of, but people are getting salaries, people are getting official cars and what have you. So the government of the day has the entire lay of the land to play. But one thing is this, of course, that the fuel subsidy has gone because it was weighing down the country. No matter where it came from, there are different kind of arguments about whether it's there, whether it's not. Is it smuggling? Is it not smuggling? If you actually begin to follow them, you probably will get confused. But the point is this. This thing is taking, if NNPC sells Nigeria's crude, for example, almost all of the profit, if not even more, is used to subsidize the fuel. So we need to walk away from that. Finally walk away from that. Now the point is, it impacts the people. One of the things I must quickly say, there's a need for what they call inflation management strategies. I was reading something earlier yesterday. One man said, immediately that statement was made, watermelon that sold for 800 naira started to sell for 2,000 naira. And, so he asked the guy selling, why are you selling this? He said, but they just increased fuel by 250%, which wasn't up to that anyway, but initially people jacked up. And so he had to increase by 250%. Is watermelon made of petrol? Is what you'd ask yourself. So there's a need for us to be very active in following all of these things up.
You transport the watermelon to where he has a shop.
Exactly. So put 30% on it. Put 20% on it. You can't even justify 50% because they've increased petrol, and then you add 50% because it's not only transportation. Watermelon is not petrol. So that's just one. However, there are things that the government must begin to consider. I mean, I heard one gentleman in your preview saying that, look, there's not even money to even begin to do palliatives. Well, that may not exactly be what people want to hear. Remember, perception is reality in matters of governance. And people are looking and say, well, a new government has come, we need to. You can't just give them the bad news without giving them the good news. And one of the things I've suggested is that, for example, government may decide that, of course, the labor has called off the strikes, and of course, there's a promise to increase salaries. But government must understand that this entire issue is not only about members of unions and labor congresses, labor unions and so on. In fact, more people are outside of the labor unions than they are in the labor union if we have 44 million or 42 million SMEs operating in Nigeria. So if you are going to take care of the labor guys by way of promising them salary increases, even though I would rather suggest, for example, reduction in payee, for example. Reduce payee almost across the board, apart from people who are earning a lot of money. Maybe big guys like you will not get anything. I'm sorry, Anyway, but if you do that, something comes back directly into the pockets of people. But that also gives you, and we're talking about whether it's private or public sector. Everybody working formally should pay payee. What we found in the private sector is that many organizations deduct the payee and don't remit. The chairman decides to use it as a slush fund. This will give, if you reduce the payee, you then have the impetus to go after compliance. You can also reduce the company income tax and position yourself as a business-friendly government. That is my advice to President Tinubu. If you did that even by 5%, Nigeria is seen as a high tax regime around the world. Many companies still pay 30% in income tax in Nigeria. Some other categories pay 25%, even though since 2020, because of COVID, President Buhari, the last administration, had to exempt companies earning turning over 25 million and below entirely from taxes, whether company income tax or even VAT, which is great, even though that needs to be reviewed at some point. It's meant to be a COVID issue. And most companies in Nigeria, most of those 44 million SMEs actually fall within that category. I think that, we need to also be careful about that, because what we need to be driving also is the fact that people have to understand that they need to pay some taxes. It's not enough for us to just keep complaining, Nigeria is bad, government is this, what are you contributing? So I'll suggest those two, among others, but to let government understand that the entire play of the field is their own. You can always take a little bit from here, add here, take from here, and that is what governance is about, give and take.
Okay, well spoken. Let's return to Dr. Umar Bindu once more. From the news that we read this morning, $800 million that the previous administration were asking from the World Bank came up again during the meeting between the Labour and the federal government yesterday. And of course, it's agreed that the committee will look into that fund, because, like, as you said, that we don't even have the fund to begin to mitigate the effect of oil subsidy removal. Dr. Umar Bindu, you talked about the human capital development, and that brings me back to your former position as a man in charge of technology acquisition and promotion, which means if we acquire and promote. In essence, it has to do with also human capital development. We have 4 refineries in this country that are dysfunctional for decades. And we also know that there's been a number of turnaround maintenance of those refineries, because what is really aching is the fact that you have a product that you send away outside the seashores of this country to produce, so to speak, and returned to us to purchase. That is the essence, that's the crux of the matter. Because some persons believe that if those refineries are functional and fuel made available, it will kill monopoly, right? And again, of course, what happened in the telecommunication sector will begin to emerge in the oil sector. Now, with your vast knowledge of human management and what have you, what would you be advising this administration to do? Already they've taken a bold step by removing the subsidy, right? What should be the next step, and how do we now imbue technology into all of this? It doesn't mean that Nigerian technicians and technologists, they don't have the capacity to refurbish our refineries, or that the funds are not available for that. We have trillions of naira spent on these refineries.
Well, this is a very big question. But you see, the thing is, Nigeria has to learn to believe in itself. And there are indices to demonstrate that it is capable of actually getting to a point where it should be. Take, for example, COVID. When COVID hit and all borders shut, all flights shut down, and then the project of government, the anchor borers, actually was the reason why we were able to produce enough rice to survive the COVID. Every country that you see, one of the biggest effects of COVID is that you'll see people queuing up near supermarkets trying to rush on buying bread, cake, and flour, and so on and so forth. Nigerian small-scale farmer was able to save Nigeria by totally producing this local commodity and minimizing the effects of importation. That is a demonstration that even the small-scale farmer, who probably is not as qualified and educated as a normal farmer, who does not have a very smooth flow of inputs, can actually save this country. And therefore, Nigeria should learn from that with 260 conventional universities today, in addition to the 37 that was recently approved, it cannot be able to produce its God-given large bulk resources of crude oil. I think the president should ask this question, at least on the federal universities. What are you doing? You have faculties of engineering, you have departments of petroleum technology, you have management all over the place, you have mathematics and everything, and you cannot process this product which literally is applying heat to it. The whole thing about refining petroleum is about applying heat to it and knowing the chemistry, how it cracks and how to do that. And we cannot do it. I think we should be able to interrogate that system. This is forgetting about the hundreds of polytechnics that we have. So many colleges of education. We cannot create this. And two, I think the president, with due respect, sir, to know that never recycle people who destroyed the system are coming back as the committee chairman and committee members of this sectoral system to now tell you what to do. I mean, if you look at the NMPC system and you trace the track of all the employees and the EDs and so on and so forth, you find that they're the same people. Whenever there is a high-powered committee to look at the petroleum sector, you see the same names. If you want to see the ministers for petrol, you see the same names and so on and so on. I think we should review our own strategy of taking management material to be very, very creative. Third, I think we should also sediment the culture of data. We just don't have data about anything we do. We don't know how much we're producing. We're exporting crude. Literally, you are expecting prosperity. And you are importing refined products subsidy. You are importing poverty. And you are subsidizing even the poverty. That should, the current government should look at that. We must be able to develop data on what do we do, how do we do it, where is it done, who is doing it, so that we can be able to track our development. And finally, I think, yes, to concentrate on macro things is excellent. How do you make the Naira strong? How do you control the inflation? But micro things are normally very difficult to target. And I think I will advise the government to ensure that this micro thing, this thing that affects the small-scale farmer, there's no single farm in this country that is 5,000 hectares of rice. But where do you get this rice? It is these 2 sacks, 10 sacks, 3 sacks. These people are the people why you are, I think, originally the subsidy is for, but we're not targeting them very well. Now, like you said about the watermelon, the guy who is producing rice must transport his fertilizer to his farm, must use his pump to irrigate his farm, must also use a thresher to thresh his rice, must now sack the bag and then transport it to the market.
All require fuel.
All that require fuel. How do you target him? How do you make sure that he gets?
That's one point I want you to make. Sorry, I'm not cutting you short. Right. You mentioned universities in Nigeria, what they are doing. They have faculties of engineering and what have you. I recall by having interviewed the Vice Chancellor of Federal University of Technology, Utuoke, and he boasted that the school has modular refinery developed by the school and that it is functional. Now, in that connection, how would such achievement be, put into the light, whatever mainstream of how does government now involve that Federal University of Technology Utuoke in this connection? Till they have this refinery, they have the technology, and they have one.
This is a specialized discussion. It's called intellectual property management. There are many people who, when they discover a small thing, they want to be the scientist, they want to be the beneficiary of the money, they want to be the entrepreneur. It doesn't work like that. When you come up with an intellectual package, it has to move. Lawyers will come in to protect it for you. Investors will come in with their financial expertise. And then that is the track, the value chain for commercialization. But when you have academics that want to go all the way, you break down somewhere and then it fizzles out. So literally, Nigeria has what it takes, but I would expect, or I'll advise the administration to start interrogating the intelligentsia. I give keynote speeches in universities or convocations. And when you go there, you are given a booklet. This is the convocation booklet. And you open the booklet. It's like an album. Lecture theaters by TED Fund. And so you don't see people. It's just beautiful buildings. What you don't see in that book is that how many patents have come out of this institution? Yes. How many critically strategic PhDs have you produced over the last 3-4 years? Where are they now? Who is licensing the technology? How much money is being repatriated from industry back to the university? You don't see that. You just see albums and then everybody claps for themselves.
Okay. Dr. Bindri, thank you very much. I want to return to a subject matter. It's pretty sensitive, but I think we can't run away from it when discussing how to manage the effects of fuel subsidy. It is alleged that there is a subsidy mafia. And it is also alleged that there is a turnaround maintenance mafia that has kept our refineries in a moribund state. And when you look at the books, when they are published from time to time, you see what the owners of the refineries tell us that they are spending to keep those refineries dead as they are in their moribund state. And just to say, some years ago, I've said it on Good Morning Nigeria, but it bears repeating on this occasion. Kaduna Refinery was working. It was fixed by the then managing director, Engineer Bola Ayodele. He used engineers also from Kaduna Polytechnic, and one of the engineers from Kaduna Polytechnic, who was our guest, affirmed it when he was on Good Morning Nigeria, and saying that the NSC, that is the Nigerian Society of Engineers in Kaduna, actually gave the then managing director of Kaduna Refinery an award. And the spares that were used for fixing Kaduna Refinery were sourced from the workshop at Ajaokuta. So it worked. But of course, the mafia would not let it be a going concern. So when we are talking about all of this, because sometimes I hear this linear argument about, oh, Dangote Refinery is coming on, by next month it will start pumping. NNPC has now said, listen, no more DSD, no more DSDP. We have a 20% stake in this, and so on and so forth. Port Harcourt, they are working on it, but how do we ensure that there is no price gouging? We don't have a virtual monopoly. And at the end of the day, prices will go up. With the greatest respect, yes, we have self-sufficiency in cement production, but is cement any cheaper today than it was, say, 10 years ago? I know there are all kinds of factors that come in. The major ingredient, of course, is limestone. And you site your cement plant near where you can find the limestone. If you started your construction work at where cement was, say, 2,000 naira or 1,000, today, I don't know whether it has hit 5,000 or so. How do we avoid that? How do we ensure a refinery is not refining only petrol? There are other additives. How do we get the mafia out of business?
Big question, but I want to quickly talk very briefly about the impact of our institutions. Actually, humbly, when I was running for president in 2019, it was one of my major planks of what I thought I could do if I won. Anyway, I was a far shot away from that anyway. But I said that, look, all our universities, we have engineers, we have all sorts of, undergraduate. You go to the university, even on your way there, you see many universities, potholes on the road, but you have students of civil engineering. What kind of projects are they doing? Don't we have to move away from these personal, individual projects that we do? Many of the times we see them dumped inside where dustbin. All of those glue things that we bind and all of that, they are wasted. Nobody uses them. So perhaps we should be having like group projects, even on electricity. Rural electricity, why don't we have students of electrical engineering go to the nearest village, power them up so that we can free the government to now deal with the cities and the industries and all of that. And I think that is what is going to increase the energy we produce from how many 4,000 megawatts or whatever it is. By the time you put in all of those, whether they're working with wind, with mini hydro, with whatever, and even students of the arts have work to do. For example, history. Most of our settlements have no contemporary history documented. The people who know the histories of all those settlements, those villages, those little towns are dying. All of their children have run to Lagos, to Abuja, to everywhere, and also, of course, we are jackpotting. And that jackpot thing, if you look at it strategically into the long term, it means extinction for us as a people. First of all those our villages will go travel home. If you are not talking of the capital cities, most of the other places are dead.
Are dying.
Dead. Anyway, so that's that. So I thank you for that. I mean, you had worked in, you had headed NOTAP and so on. I thank you for that. That a few people are also thinking in that regard. Some of the ideas we need to borrow this government. To listen, put them under pressure. The history of our settlements can be collected by students of history, and they can be documented, put online by students of IT. And you can even begin to pay these students a token for getting involved in those projects that will now, so we're now looking at, okay, adding more fees to universities. You have to give, everything's about give and take. You have to give them this impetus. So now we're talking about the subsidy mafia. The thing about it is this. Let me tell you. I mean, I was reading one Dr. Izilien Agbon, who I think used to be HOD of one of the petroleum faculties in Nigeria, but now based abroad. I know that Benin Republic uses 44,000 barrels of crude oil every day for fueling. Cameroon uses only 42,000. Chad uses only 1,300. And Nigeria uses about 13,000 every day. Nigeria uses about 400,000, 40,000. If you look at all of the amounts of fuel that has been said to be used in Nigeria, you realize that all of these 4 countries around us, they can't even absorb 30% of the amount of crude fuel that is said to be smuggled out of this country. He was able to prove in his article that indeed it's a joke for us to say so many trucks are escaping every day. The customs has also said it is untrue. And even if it were true, that means you have thousands of trucks going out everywhere every day. And I hear people also talk about, we are giving fuel to the whole of Africa. Okay. I think it is preposterous.
Let me pause you because we're having challenge with your microphone.
I see.
Engineers are going to take care of it. Just stay. They'll take care of it. We'll return to you when that is done. You will give us signal that the microphone is
I would therefore like Dr. Bindri. Dr. Bindri, how do we put the mafia out of business?
Well, I think we have to calm down and don't think that this mafia system is unbreakable. When you say mafia, people get scared that, when you touch them, they kill you and so on and so forth. I think we need to calm down to utilize common sense. I said before, just like my Oga said here, you just don't have the statistics of the things operating. You don't know where the fuel is coming from, how much is coming in, who is picking up, what vehicle is taking it, and so on and so forth. So you need to do that to be able to not just deal with the mafia, but just to sanitize the system and develop institutions to help a country of 200 or more than 200 people to survive. Now, the thing that people don't understand about this subsidy or all these social safety net is this. It is very, very expensive. It doesn't matter, you can take the subsidy, but this system is very expensive. I give an example with Empower. Everybody knows Empower. In this country, you have between 20 to 30 million graduates on the streets. If you take only 1 million under Empower, on a stipend of 30,000 naira per month, which everybody thinks is too small, the bill is actually 30 billion naira every month. In 10 months, it's 300 billion. So it's not easy. But what you need to do is that if you are spending 30 billion naira, you need to ensure that the guy who has been is unemployed, is living in that village, is teaching in the village primary school. That is what you have to do. And therefore, the capacity to implement it is very important. These people are not readily available, who are God-fearing, who are technically perfect, using devices to report. This is the matrix of all this. So taking subsidy off may be just one component of the value chain, but the whole thing is not the mafia, it's our system that we have refused to institutionalize systems in this country, and therefore we suffer. And then we blame mafia and so on and so forth. They may not exist, they may exist, but actually I think we must be able to get Nigeria on a track of technologically driven country.
Exactly. The system created the mafia, from all indications.